Don't mind me, guys. I'm just gonna use my flying jetpack melee attack to blind this target while I whip out my hive machine gun, which creates threadling nests on the ground. Yeah, the new exotics are pretty crazy. What is up, guys? It's your boy Rick Gakis, and today we're going to be showcasing gameplay and going over everything you need to know about all of the new exotics coming to Destiny 2 in the upcoming Renegades expansion. Or at least I'm 99% sure this is all of them. Maybe there's a hidden secret one Bungie didn't tell anyone about, which would be awesome. But we have 3 new exotic weapons and 3 more new exotic armor pieces. And I'm going to be honest, guys, I think multiple of these new exotics will become meta. We have some extremely powerful looking new exotics coming in this expansion. And so, let's get started. Now, let's begin here with the weapons, and of course, the first weapon we've got to go over is the Praxic Blade Exotic Sword, aka the Lightsaber. Now, this weapon is insane. In fact, it's so insane, I've actually made a completely separate video going over everything this weapon can do, because this is not your average sword. So if you want to see like all the details about this thing in depth, definitely watch that video. But to go over things quickly in this video while we're showcasing all the exotics, first of all, the Praxic Blade is actually a kinetic special weapon sword. On top of that, the sword heavy attack is replaced with a ranged attack where you throw your lightsaber, and there's a light and heavy version of this ranged attack. On top of that, you have the capability to normally melee like a sword, but there's a combo you can pull off with 3 light attacks and then a heavy attack where you do a big spin for a ton of bonus damage, as you can see. And then, of course, your block is unlike any other sword block because you're doing the Star Wars blaster deflection, so you have this ranged offensive capability while you're blocking and massively mitigating incoming damage. All of that combined on top of how unbelievably customizable this Praxic Blade is means that I genuinely think this will be one of the most used and most meta weapons in the entire game going into the Renegades expansion. It can just do so much. You want to melee, you want to throw it across the map, you want to sit there and block. All of it is very effective. So, moving on from there, our next exotic weapon here is what you saw at the beginning of the video, and that is the Service of Luzaku Exotic Strand Machine Gun. Now, this is the new Season's Pass exotic, and taking a look at the traits here, intrinsically, you have dichotomous thinking. Hitting targets with this weapon builds a restorative charge. Hip-firing allies while this weapon is charged heals them, so it has the healing auto-rifle functionality. When you're doing that, it does not expend ammo and fills this weapon's magazine from reserves. Rapid healing increases weapon damage and spawns threadlings from your allies. On top of that, you have another unique trait here, meaning making, which says final blows with this weapon create a threadling nest that periodically spawns threadlings. Final blows with this weapon near an existing threadling nest create a threadling instead. So, this is a crazy weapon. First of all, you can see from the gameplay that you're not shooting normal bullets. They're more similar to the Osteostriga, the like hive-seeking bullets, so a bit harder to get like those headshots, but very easy to get base kills. Essentially, this is like now the most powerful healing auto rifle in the game, by the fact that it's actually a machine gun and doing machine gun damage. Also, Hatchling? Never heard of it, right? Like, friendship with Hatchling ended. Now, this is my new best friend because, oh my goodness, the threadling nests are Hatchling on Omega steroids. It will continuously pop out threadlings, as you can see in the background gameplay, but if that wasn't enough, you can heal the threadling nests. As you can see, that's right, you can hip fire these nests that will actually make them spawn even more threadlings. It'll make them pop them out even faster. And again, this uses up no ammo, right? This is just that healing functionality that builds up from getting kills. So you have the most effective like threadling weapon in the game. If you're running threadlings, if you're running a strand build and you want threadling synergies, I mean, oh my goodness, these threadling nests spit out a ton of them. And you actually get even more strand synergies when we take a look at the catalyst, which says that the threadling nests now mature over time. Fully mature nests can be harvested to create a tangle, guys. And so that's complex, but here's what it actually means in game. When you create that threadling nest, you can shoot those healing rounds at it to make it like mature faster, and then when it is mature, when it's finished, it'll start to glow. Now keep in mind, you don't have to harvest it. It will still just sit there and spit out threadlings, but if you want to, you can interact with it, and then you create a tangle that you can throw at targets. So just a crazy weapon with so much functionality. You're clearing ads, you're spawning a ton of threadlings, you're healing your teammates, and now you're chucking tangles everywhere. Wild weapon. But moving on from there, the last exotic weapon we're going to take a look at here is the new dungeon exotic weapon, and that is the Heirloom Exotic Combat Bow. Now importantly, unlike the other like crossbows in the game that are heavy, this is a special weapon. And taking a look at the intrinsic trait, it's Bolt Thrower. This weapon fires high-powered explosive bolts, strong against unstopped champions, so intrinsic unstopped stunning. And we have another unique trait here, Big Game Hunter. Aim down sights for a period of time to overcharge the next bolt fired. Increases damage and area of effect for each charge level. So, this is a very unique weapon to use, and you can see in the background gameplay, you aim down sights, you don't shoot, and you will see like a ramp build up in your scope, and it will tell you how much extra damage and how much extra blast radius you're going to get. If you let it charge all the way, like eventually the ramp kind of will stop, and then if you shoot, as you can see, it's a pretty darn big explosion. Now, importantly, building up this charge costs no extra ammo, just costs your time. And so, if you are only shooting like the Omega fully charged bolts, you are essentially getting like what is a rocket launcher, like literally equivalent rocket launcher damage and radius with special weapon ammo economy. Now, of course, the downside is that you do have to aim down sights for quite a while for it to build up. Not to mention, this is a heat weapon, so if you are shooting too much, it will overheat and you have a longer cooldown animation. But if you kind of charge it just right, I believe it's around 2 fully charged shots back to back, you can actually do a quick vent to make it reload a lot quicker than normal, guys. But also, it has stages to this build-up process. So you can see as it's ramping up, it'll like have a certain stage, like a break in the icon, and then it starts ramping up again. There's another like break. So each one of these stages will do like a little bit more damage and blast radius. So if you charge it up to the first stage, it's gonna do like a certain explosion. You charge it up to the second, kind of click, and you'll hear these audio clicks as well when you're aiming down sights. It'll do a slightly bigger damage explosion, and then of course you have fully charged, which we already saw. But that means that it's not all or nothing, right? Like it's not like you have to charge it up to full or you just do the base crap damage. You have these different tiers that, hey, you're getting shot at, you don't have time for a full charge, maybe you can get off a tier 2 like shot, which is still gonna do a massive amount of damage. Now, in terms of the exotic catalyst, guys, as you can see right here, it says, direct hits with charged shots scorch the target. This weapon deals more damage against scorched targets. Now, how much extra damage are we talking about? Well, I did the testing, and it turns out with the initial full charged shot, I dealt almost 2,400 damage. If you're wondering why that's a bit less than the numbers I just presented for the various damages along the different charges, that's because for those numbers, I forgot I had the exotic hunter legs on, so those numbers are inflated by about 15%. We'll get to that later in the video, but regardless, for that first shot, again, that's going to inflict the scorch effect, and then for the follow-up full charge shot against that scorching target, it now deals 2,600 damage, and that's around 10% more damage. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but remember, that's just like the impact and the explosion damage of the Heirloom crossbow. That is not counting all the extra damage you're getting for scorching, right? You can see how often I'm getting these ignitions for hitting these targets at a full charge, so the ignition damage is adding even more than that 10% bonus damage, so that this will significantly increase the damage output of this exotic. Alright, now it's time to move on to the exotic armor, and the first one we're going to look at is the one I got to use the most, I got the most gameplay with, and that of course is the Titan exotic, the brand new Praxic Vestment exotic chest piece. So, the armor perk is Praxic Lift. There's quite a lot going on here. So, you gain an air move jetpack. Weapon and arc-powered melee final blows build up jetpack fuel. While airborne, you press and hold whatever button you have assigned to like mid-air move, like Icarus Dash, and then you charge your jetpack. On release, you activate your jetpack with a forceful blast of exhausting arc energy and then fly forward a short distance based on the amount charged. You collide with a combatant to unleash a blinding blast of energy and gain a temporary bonus to your melee stat. Whew, okay, so here's what that actually looks like in game. You can see my jetpack fuel on the left side of my screen, and it will slowly just build over time automatically. So even if I'm not in combat, eventually it will fully charge. But again, weapon kills and arc melee kills really charge it. So I was using Thunderclap on Prismatic, and if I got like 3 kills, it would go from empty to fully charged. Now, this is very important because when you do jump up into the air, you hold that activation, you can see you can do like a little bit of an animation, and then if you hold it long enough, it's fully charged, it'll just automatically fly you forward, and you'll see the jetpack fuel depleting as you're flying, and my goodness, you can fly way further than I expected. Like, this is not an Icarus Dash. You can get up to some crazy places. This is quite a movement ability, but when you come in contact with an enemy, you do that blinding attack. And guys, here's the exciting part. This seems to be coded as a melee attack, evident by the fact that I'm using a melee kind of build here. I have the fragment that gives me Radiant when I get a melee hit, and I get Radiant when I do this jetpack attack on these enemies. Like, what else would be giving me Radiant, right? And so, if you're speccing into melee, this jetpack attack, it's gonna do more damage based on your melee stat, and that means that your arc melee that's gonna recharge your jetpack is also gonna be doing more damage because you get a melee stat increase when you get a successful jetpack hit. Like, it's all pretty crazy, and I've kind of skimmed over the fact that when you initially launch your jetpack, you also get that exhausting arc burst near the enemies at your initial location. Now, the one important thing about this jetpack is that charge feature, right? You don't have to do it. You can basically just press the button and you do a very short jetpack. Like, it'll run out of fuel very quickly, and so often you do want to hold it down. You want to get the full charge if you're trying to go any meaningful length of distance. But I initially thought this was going to be like a very gimmicky exotic, but because it actually synergizes well with melee stuff, and the Titan is all about melee, and because you really are going much further and faster than I initially thought, it actually is, I think, going to result in some pretty fun builds. Now, is it going to be like day one raid super sweaty builds? No, but is it surprisingly effective and not just a gimmick? Actually, yes. But moving on from there, guys, let's talk about the Warlock's new exotic. And that is the Daimosian exotic helmet. So here's what it does. Intrinsically, it has Malevolent Grasp. While a Strand Super is equipped, casting Rift will suspend nearby targets. Suspend deals damage over time, which heals you in the process. Targets who break free from Suspend suffer additional damage. Defeating suspended targets heals you a moderate amount. So, you can see that Rift effect right here, guys. I cast my Rift, and what do you know, nearby enemies are suspended. Unfortunately, this does not actually work with Phoenix Dive, as you can see, but importantly, I want to point out that if I kind of play the slow-mo footage of me casting my Rift, you can see there is actually like a strand circle that emulates outwards from the Rift, and that is essentially the radius in which you are suspending enemies. Now, notice it does actually go significantly further than your Rift. So the radius of the suspend is not your Rift, and you'll see me like look around. I have enemies suspended well outside the Rift, clearly, as you can see. And so already that's pretty nice, like turning your Rift, if you're running Rifts, now they're just going to auto suspend enemies. And that damage over time is pretty nice as well. Now, in terms of how much damage you're actually doing, as you can see against these yellow bar cabals, it leaves them almost dead. And I thought initially, okay, so that's the mechanic, it leaves enemies almost dead. No, as you can see, if I shoot this cabal first and then do the suspend, it'll actually kill them. So it's kind of a regulated amount of damage you actually deal for this suspend. Now, of course, all of this means that if you're using other suspending things, for example, you're on strand and you're using your suspension grenade, your shackle grenade, yes, those suspended enemies will take damage over time. They will heal you when defeated and all of that stuff. And it's very exciting with the new Malpus, right? The exotic scout rifle that is in the current Ashen Iron Seasons Pass that has the ability to suspend. So you can see right here, when I get this suspend off against this big yellow bar target, well, now this guy is taking damage over time, right? Like now killing him would heal me. And honestly, I love exotics like this because it is just begging for a build to be made around it, like a Warlock suspension build on strand, using suspending grenades, using the new Malpus, obviously using your Rift, and just running around trying to suspend as many enemies as you can. Suspending is very effective. I mean, I run suspension grenades often when I'm playing my Prismatic Titan on high-level content because, well, it's going to stun unstopped champions, and like, it's just very, very effective at crowd control. So now having all these additional things, damage, healing, and so on, related to suspending, this could be pretty darn powerful. And it's one of those things where this exotic will only get better if down the road, new exotic weapons or new legendary weapon perks have suspend synergies, right? This is the suspend build exotic. And speaking of a suspend build, the last thing I want to mention with this exotic is that, remember, you have the Thread of Mind Strand Fragment, where defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy, and your class ability suspends targets. So yeah, that's quite the start to a build with just one fragment. Alright, it's time to move on from there to our final new exotic, and that is for the Hunter. Now, this is going to be the Fortune's Favor exotic legs. So, the intrinsic perk here is Kismet. After landing a final blow while at full health or when out of combat for an extended duration, your shields will slowly recharge into an overshield. When you have an overshield, your weapons gain increased accuracy, stability, handling, and damage against combatants, so only PvE enemies. And final blows will grant a short period of increased mobility once the overshield is depleted. So again, a lot going on here, but here's what they actually do in-game. As you can see right here, I have full health, I get a kill, and I start genning an overshield. When I have this overshield, I get a weapon damage boost. So I hit for 35 for a headshot on this enemy, I get rid of my overshield, and now I'm hitting for 31. So that's like a 13% increase. But very importantly, and as you're going to see in the background gameplay, the ability to gen an overshield while at full health has no cooldown. And remember, being at full health does not count your overshield. So what happens is that as long as you gen that first overshield, if you keep getting kills while you still have any amount of overshield. Like, let's say your overshield has 1% left before it goes away, right before it's damaged away. If you get a kill, it'll start genning a new overshield. And then you get a kill, it'll start genning a new overshield. So as long as you're getting kills, you can actually keep this overshield up for a considerable amount of time. Like, eventually, you know, if a boss smacks you, it's going to go all the way down. But against little targets, and again, you're seeing that in the background gameplay, it's very easy to keep that overshield genned. So that is one whole part of this exotic. Like, if you get that overshield and you can maintain it, I mean, you always have an overshield and you're always doing a bit more damage and you have all these other effects on stability and etc. So that's all actually pretty decent. On top of that, it really synergizes with healing effects. So if you have a weapon with heal clip, as you can see, well, if you can activate heal clip and go back to full health and just get one more kill before you take damage, that will start genning your overshield. And then again, you can keep chaining final blows to keep generating that overshield and get all those benefits. The really crazy part is PvP. Now, like we've said, this the increase in damage only affects combatants. So I did test this. I got no damage increase in PvP from having an overshield. But I can confirm 100% you will just naturally gain an overshield for doing nothing. So although you don't get a damage boost if you're playing Trials, if you're like the last man standing, it's 1v1, why wouldn't you just hide behind a rock and get a free overshield and then pop out when you have an overshield, right? Like at the beginning of Trials, why wouldn't you just wait and gen an overshield before going out and getting into combat? Now, Bungie clearly was aware of this, and as you can see, your overshield charges a lot slower in PvP, but if you have enough patience, you could still do it for sure. But maybe the balancing factor is that, hey, if you wait in the back of the map, your enemies are getting a much better positions on the map. They're getting the advantageous positions, advantageous sight lines while you're hiding, waiting for your overshield to charge. So maybe it won't be that bad, but the repercussions, it could really be crazy. Guys, that is going to be it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.